Gigacoasters are some of the largest roller coasters ever built, with heights or drops exceeding 300 feet, that's over 90 meters. Worldwide, only 7 of these roller coasters exist, and each one of them is completely unique. It's been a long journey across 4 countries and 3 continents, but I've had the pleasure of riding every single one of them. But which Gigacoaster is the best? Let's find out. I'm Rollercoaster David, and this is my ranking of the top Gigacoasters in the world. Number 7, Red Force at Ferrari Land in Spain. Starting this list off with a bang, this is the tallest and fastest roller coaster of all the Gigas. There could be some controversy here though, as Red Force is so different from all the rest of the rides in this list that you could argue whether or not to include it at all. Despite this, you can't deny that standing at 367 feet, it's definitely in the right height range, although its layout is more like a shorter strata coaster than any of the other Gigas. Red Force is a launch coaster, where powerful linear electric motors accelerate you to over 111 miles per hour in just 5 seconds, that's 180 kilometers per hour. It's an amazing experience from start to finish, but the whole ride is over in just a matter of seconds, whereas the other rides in this list are much more substantial. There's no denying the thrill factor of this coaster though, as it holds the record for being the tallest and fastest roller coaster in Europe. Red Force sure packs a punch, and you get some wonderful airtime over the top hat, followed by an amazing 90-degree vertical drop all the way down to the ground. There's even a surprise pop of airtime just before you hit the final brakes, which adds an extra thrill to the ride's ending. Its Ferrari theming is visually striking, with a huge badge on the ride structure, and each of the trains is styled to look like a Formula 1 car. Red Force is an awesome coaster, but there are even better rides to follow in the rest of this list. Number 6, Millennium Force at Cedar Point in Ohio, USA. Millennium Force, manufactured by Intamin, was the first ever Gigacoaster to open and broke existing world records with an impressive height of 310 feet and a top speed of 93 miles per hour. To this day, it remains one of the most popular rides at Cedar Point, and for a long time, many people considered this to be the best roller coaster in the world. A lot has happened in the 23 years since the ride opened, however, with different ride manufacturers pushing things further with innovative layouts and new elements. Whilst I appreciate the boundaries pushed and the engineering challenges behind the ride, I personally find Millennium Force's layout to be a bit uninspiring. Don't get me wrong, the first drop is great, and it's got a fantastic speed sensation, and you get some nice bits of floaty airtime over the 2 large hills and the small speed hill that it has, but other than that, there's just a series of overbanked turns that don't really do much. I mean, if you're a fan of overbanked turns, then this is the ride for you, but if you've experienced more modern designs, then this coaster could easily underwhelm. Millennium Force certainly pushed engineering limits when it opened, but in some respects it kinda feels like Intamin played it a bit too safe with the design, and it kinda feels like it's just meandering around the park, when it could be doing so much more to thrill riders. It does complement the park's overall lineup nicely though, as Cedar Point already has an extreme ejector airtime machine in the form of Magnum XL200, and it's also got an amazing fun hybrid roller coaster called Gemini. It does provide a refreshingly different ride experience to both of those two though, but when taken on its own merits as a standalone Gigacoaster, I kinda feel it's one of the weaker ones, and in some respects, it's showing its age. Millennium Force will always have its fans however, and I'm sure they'll be very vocal in the comments, but for me, when it comes to Gigacoasters, I think the others are better. Number 5, Orion at Kings Island in Ohio, USA. This is the newest Gigacoaster, having just opened back in July 2020, and the first on this list to be made by Swiss manufacturer B&M. It's also the smallest though, and some might even argue that it isn't even a proper Gigacoaster at all. The height of the lift hill is only 287 feet, but despite that, its landscaping allows it to have a 300-foot drop at an impressively steep angle of 85 degrees, so for argument's sake, I've decided to keep it as part of the list. If there's 2 words to describe Orion, it's fast and smooth, as it sails effortlessly throughout its layout, but if there's a 3rd word, it might be short, as it feels like it's over a bit too quickly for my liking. Maybe I've just been spoilt by the other Gigas on this list, but having a few extra elements added to this ride would make it feel a lot more substantial, and add a lot to the overall ride experience. One thing I do particularly like though is the first drop, which feels fantastic. This is the steepest B&M Giga Coaster, so the added steepness makes for awesome airtime, even if you're near the front. The rest of the layout has some interesting hills at some slightly odd angles, and it's clear that this being a new coaster, the manufacturer is trying to change things up a bit and do things slightly different. Now, just because this coaster is in the lower half of this list doesn't mean it isn't any good, as it's still a fantastic ride that feels fast, smooth and exciting, but I just kind of feel like it's a little more restrained than the others, and with its lower height it feels like they were trying to save money and hold back, rather than going all out and create the greatest thrill coaster they could. Number 4, Leviathan, at Canada's Wonderland, Ontario, Canada. Deciding between Leviathan and Orion was very difficult, but I think the best rides I had in Leviathan were just a little bit better, so in my opinion, Canada's tallest coaster has a slight edge. This was B&M's first attempt at Gigacoaster, and they got a lot right about it. At 306 feet tall with a top speed of 92 miles per hour, the ride certainly impresses, and it's notably the tallest and fastest roller coaster in all of Canada. This was also the first Gigacoaster that I personally rode, so perhaps I've got a bit of a soft spot for it, but it's still a fantastic ride. With several close to the ground elements and some high soaring airtime, you really get a speed rush and it feels fast throughout the whole layout. This is also the only Gigacoaster I've ever ridden in heavy rain, which is an interesting if somewhat painful experience in itself. The rain makes it feel even faster and makes for a wilder ride somehow. If I were to have one criticism about Leviathan, it would again be that it feels a little on the short side, but to a lesser extent than Orion. That's a problem this next coaster on the list definitely does not have, however. Number 3, Steel Dragon 2000 at Nagashima Spaland near Nagoya in Japan. Steel Dragon 2000 is the longest roller coaster ever built, at 8,133 feet. That's over 1,500 feet longer than any other coaster in this list. It's over 1.5 miles long. It opened less than 3 months after Millennium Force and broke its height and speed records by 8 feet and 2 miles per hour respectively. It was built by D.H. Morgan, and in some respects it's got a bit of an old school sort of layout, bearing similarities to Morgan's previous hypercoasters such as Steel Force, Mamba and the Mexican Superman coaster. Unlike these coasters, however, it's got more modern open seats designed by B&M, which have more comfortable clamshell restraints. This is one of the most imposing and impressive roller coaster structures ever built, and it's quite a sight to behold. As well as its impressive size and length, this coaster had to be built with extra supports to be able to handle earthquakes that can affect the region, so it really is an engineering marvel. This is one of the main reasons why it cost over twice as much as Millennium Force to build, despite opening the very same year. The first drop on Steel Dragon 2000 is quite simply fantastic, and you really feel the ride's impressive speed for its whole duration. The first airtime hill is absolutely massive, standing at 252 feet tall, which in itself is larger than many of the world's tallest thrill rides. After some long, fast helixes, the ride makes a return journey back to the station that's got a relentless barrage of airtime hills, some of which dive through tunnels. These seem to go on and on forever, and you get great air over each one, before you finally hit the brake run at the end. Its design may be simple compared to some more recent attempts, but it will always be a favourite ride of mine with the crazy amount of airtime that it has. Number 2, Fury 325 at Carowinds between the Carolinas in the USA. Fury 325, as the name suggests, is 325 feet tall, with a 320 foot drop that reaches 95 miles per hour. It is the tallest lift hill in the world and is a breathtaking coaster to behold. Unfortunately, it's been in the news recently for all the wrong reasons, as one of the track supports failed and cracked badly. Fortunately, these rides are designed with safety and redundancy in mind, so the ride closed before there was any chance of anyone getting injured, and following the installation of a new support, it's expected to reopen very soon. Fury 325 is one of my all-time favourite rides, and it's got a really great and varied layout. There's an awesome mixture of speed, airtime and fun twists and turns. I particularly like the horseshoe turnaround and the wonderful sideways airtime it provides. It was also designed to give the entrance to Carowinds a makeover, and the coaster goes over and under a bridge that takes you into the park, letting you know that this is their signature coaster. It's also great that it doesn't really seem to be anything held back in this design. It's the tallest ride B&M have ever built, and it's only second in length to the mighty Steel Dragon. Despite its size, however, nothing is too excessive for this coaster, so most people can ride it multiple times over and over, and I'd happily marathon it all day. The speed sensation is really amplified by the low to the ground sections, and the whole ride is silky smooth. The queue line always moves quickly as well, and Fury 325 usually runs 3 high capacity trains. With a solid mix of elements, airtime speed and unique moments, a lot of people have this ride in their top 10 or even as their number 1. For me though, there's one Gigacoaster that's got it soundly beaten. Number 1, Intimidator 305, Kings Dominion, Virginia, USA. Intimidator 305 is the best Gigacoaster in the world, and for a long time it was my personal number 1 roller coaster. It definitely lives up to its name, with a massive lift hill and steep drop, and whilst I know not everyone enjoys it as much as I do, for me Intimidator 305 is one of the greatest roller coasters ever built. I love the intensity of the ride, and the sheer insanity that went into its construction. The fact that the first turn is so fast and close to the ground with sustained G-force enough to make most people grey out is just crazy. A 300-foot lift hill gives the ride a lot of energy, so after the first drop where the ride reaches its top speed, all the other Gigas pull upwards to slow the train down and convert that energy from speed to height. Intimidator 305 doesn't do that. Instead, Intimidator 305 goes straight into a tight right-handed, low-to-the-ground banked corner at full speed, delivering strong, sustained positive G-force that's too much for a lot of people to handle. If Intamin played it safe with their first attempt at a Giga, Millennium Force, then they went the complete opposite direction for this coaster, and in many ways, I'm surprised it was ever built at all. When it first opened, the ride was so intense that it had to be modified with the trim on the first drop to slow it down, and then the first turn was rebuilt during the off-season to make it less intense. Despite this, it's still one of the most intense rides in the world. I kinda wish I could have experienced the ride in its original form, but even the updated version still has enough Gs to make you grey out in its first turn. It's not all about the positive G-forces though, as there's also some decent airtime to be had as well. The rapid changes in direction of some of the track sections are incredibly snappy too, and they also give their own kind of rotational airtime. POV videos can't really do this coaster justice in my opinion, so you just have to ride it if you ever get the chance. It turns the intensity dial up to 11 and pretty much makes it stay there, so be warned, it's not for the faint of heart. Even amongst enthusiasts, it can be a bit of a Marmite coaster, with some people hating it, and others like myself absolutely loving it. Some people just find it a bit too much, but not me. I'll also be honest here and point out that I criticise other Gigas for being a bit short. Well, this coaster is the shortest of all the Gigas with lift hills. There's a key difference though, in that I don't think that it feels short, which I understand may sound a bit silly. The thing is, when the ride is this intense and holds its speed and thrills this well for the whole ride, you feel like you've had a complete experience at the end, and that nothing's been held back. Racing around the track at breakneck speed is exhilarating, and you almost feel a bit of relief when you can finally catch your breath on the brake run. It may only be 5,100 feet, but to me that's exactly the length it needs to be. Pretty much every second of the ride is a high-speed thrill and deserves to be savoured. It's a white knuckle ride all the way to the end. So that's my list of the top Gigacoasters. Which is your favourite, and which would you most like to ride if you haven't experienced it before? Let me know this in the comments, and if you're new here, then take a look at some of my other videos and consider subscribing. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.